So everybody that's joining us this evening, we have Andreana Araya. She is what I would like to call a one of the anomalies in real estate investing, because she encompasses a lot of things, primarily for her own business and growth, but also she does do a lot of work and helps a lot of our SVI members. So Andreana, what I'm going to go over here on the presentation first is a little bit about yourself and some housekeeping, and then we'll move straight into the ability for you to go into your presentation.
Okay.
So StratiVentures, guys, is a team built by investors for investors. And we're going to be speaking here with Andreana today about analyzing a deal and running comps. More on the side of pulling comps, because I believe, Andreana, that is one of the most important focuses of analyzing a deal, is having your, as I would like to call, your ARV, your after repair value. Yep. If you don't have a solid starting point, you really don't have anything. So we'll start with the welcome, and then we'll move Andreana into the speaking part here at around 6:35. And then around 7:10, we'll open it up to an attendee Q&A. I believe it's probably okay if we happen to run over on time, if it's okay with you, if we have a lot of questions.
Sure.
But that's the whole point of these sessions, are to have people answer the questions. So those of you that have used Zoom in the past, there's some key buttons that will appear on your dashboard. Some might apply, some might not. And the two most important ones, as we like to say, are if you have questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A section, and then I'll be able to moderate the Q&A. And if there's questions, Andreana, I might step in and ask you those questions if you don't mind, or you feel free to screen them yourself, and if you want to handle them. Okay. And then the last one is the chat. In the chat part of it, you're going to be receiving messages and notices from the moderators there, which are Oriana and Enid of SVI. And feel free, if you've got any questions outside of topic, send them that way. But in topic, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. And last but not least, not because of Andreana, if you get bored of Diego, just leave the webinar, right? and go ahead and just let the girls know that Diego messed it up again. And guys, this event is for you. So we want to make sure that we make it the best. So we encourage questions. So feel free to ask questions. That's why people like Andreana are spending time here to work with you. You can get to know us a little bit more at StratiVentures at investorrealestatetraining.com. Feel free to go through that webpage, take a look at who we are. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, as I said, we are a team built by investors for investors, and we're all about helping the implementation side of real estate investing. And I think we're now up to 9 national real estate education companies that we help their member base, and they don't even know, because people are coming to us for that extraordinary help of implementation. About our speaker. So Andreana, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out.
It's kind of weird to hear somebody talk about me, but let me, I guess, why am I here? Who am I? I am a native Houstonian. I did graduate from Texas A&M with the industrial engineering degree. I also have a master's from Southern Methodist up in Dallas in engineering as well. I have been in real estate for the past 12 years or so. I started out for tax purposes. I was in corporate world and I bought my first rental, and it was mainly for tax purposes. No really activity in real estate other than that. And then I grew from that one property. In a couple years later, I bought a few more. And that's when it started kind of becoming real as far as my business in real estate. And about 4 years ago, I got laid off twice in 1 year. And I said, you know what, I'm done with oil and gas. So for those of you that are from Houston or familiar with Houston, a lot of what we have here from a business perspective is oil and gas. And so I decided to go ahead and try this new venture in real estate, which I had already been as a hobby, flipping a property by myself with my ex-boyfriend, well, boyfriend at the time. We were flipping ourselves. So I learned how to sheetrock. I learned how to put tile down. I learned how to do it all myself. And I really enjoyed that process, which is how I ended up continuing in that journey after my corporate world. And then I really enjoyed the environment. I joined SVI probably about that same time when I got laid off. And I learned that I liked being around everybody that was talking all the same languages, which is real estate, right? It's a completely different language. It was something I learned. I did do a national education class. It was like drinking water out of a fire hose. It was an interesting and very my equivalent to the university. And so I joined SVI, and they were my hands-on. I actually joined in the middle of my very first flip that I did post corporate world, and I was stuck in a crazy mess, and Diego helped me get out of a joint venture that wasn't documented properly, a whole flip that was not going well, and it was an easy flip. It was a $7,000, maybe $8,000 flip. It should have gone fast. Long story short, the good thing is I made $2,000. So I didn't lose. So I was excited. Thanks for Diego's help on that. I am here and I joined SVI. I became a realtor with SVI, and then I'm also a hard money lender. So for those of you that are familiar with hard money lending, that are not familiar, this is one of the funding mechanisms that a lot of investors use when flipping properties or converting properties into rentals. So you can speak to me about that later. This topic is more focused on the deal and comps and how to look at a property. So if y'all have any other questions about me, feel free to send a chat to the moderators, and I can reach out to you at a later time on that.
All right.
The question, Q&A, put it in there. And Diego, if you don't mind, as they go asking questions about something that may be relevant to what I'm talking about, just give me a holler because I won't be checking as I'm talking.
That'll work. Thank you so much for giving us some insight on who you are. And one thing I can definitely tell you is that since you've been helping a lot of the SVI members, there's clarity, there's a process, and most of all, there's confidence. And you know, that confidence is what should resonate in this business. But I think it's the number one thing that is missing because people don't trust the data. People aren't trusting the people they're working with. And without confidence in this business, you don't make offers, right? And if you don't make offers, you're not practicing real estate, is what I like to call it. So her presentation key points today, guys, are going to how to look for investment properties using the MLS. Also, the process of pulling comps on MLS and also non-MLS systems. And also, we're going to go into a little bit of what to avoid. Am I correct to hit those key points there, Andreana?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So by doing that, here's Andreana's full contact information if you wanted to do that, but also we'll be putting that live on the next, after your presentation. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and bow out here. Oops. Okay. And go ahead and get you and have you start sharing your presentation if you don't mind. And we can take it from there.
Okay, guys. So I don't have a presentation per se. This is going to be kind of fluid going through different websites, and I'm going to kind of walk you through this process. One of the things, and I wanted to back this up, it doesn't really go in the bio, but one of the things I learned in SVI and in my education, and one of the biggest things is getting an education in real estate when you're going to go down this process. But what I learned was realtors don't know how to pull comps, okay? When I took my own license, they don't teach you how to pull comps. And so it's one of the most critical parts of our job, but it's not taught to us. We're taught all the legalities of the contracts and the forms and et cetera. So I encourage you, when you're working with a realtor, talk to your realtor, understand if they understand what ARV is. I can't count how many times I've been on a phone call and from a hard money lending standpoint, explaining to them, to their realtor, what an ARV was, because the first thing a lender's going to want to hear is, what is the ARV on the property? What are you purchasing it for? And what's your repair? So those are going to be your 3 key things that you need to learn about the property. And what you're going to want to know is, what's the ARV, which is the after repair value. So what is the value after you're going to sell it? How much are you going to put into it in repairs, and how much are you buying it for? So those are always the 3 key numbers that you're going to want to know when talking to your lender. But before that, you need to understand, where should I invest? Everyone's like, oh, where should I go invest? And one of the things we always say, and everybody, and I'm guilty of this, the first thing I did was I did a search for houses under $150,000 in Houston, which is the very first thing everybody does. And it is fine. But what you're going to find out is there's not going to be a lot of meat on the bone. When it comes to properties under 150 and even 200,000, once you start running the numbers, the repairs, those properties are not as profitable as properties that we recommend sticking between $250,000 and $300,000. Okay. So the next question I always get asked is, oh, I don't have MLS access. Okay. Number one, you need to find a realtor that you're going to be working with no matter what area of town you're in. I do recommend, let's say if you are looking at the north side, work with a realtor that's familiar with the north end. For example, I'm very familiar with the south end of Houston, but if you start talking to me about the Woodlands, I have absolutely no idea about it. I will run you comps all day long, but I cannot advise you on the neighborhoods and familiarity with the neighborhoods. So find a realtor that's going to be able to help you in your area that you're targeting. And what areas should you target? Because everybody wants to go in their own backyard, and they may not be the right place for them to start flipping. So there's a couple of avenues. I recommend you use and learn how to use all of the tools available to you. So you have Zillow, you have HAR here in Houston, and MLS. And one of the things, if you do have an agent, you can work with them and try to offer paying of some of their fees so that they can show you how to use the MLS, and you can work closely, because you will be working very closely with them getting comps. So you want to offer some payment towards those services. But we'll go ahead and start with Zillow, which most people have. And what did I say? We're looking at 250 to 300,000. So we're looking for in the Houston area. If you're in a different area, you can put that as well. For sale, you're going to go here to the price, and you're going to put 250,000, 300,000.
And
So
Andreana,
what is that?
just to make sure we're not advocating that that Zillow is going to be your end all be all final comp, right? No,
Correct.
we're not saying that.
No.
Okay.
No, this is targeting the areas that you want to start looking into. So when people are like, where do I even start looking? You're going to want to start looking $250,000, $300,000, the $300,000 range, right? Your strategy may be 150 to 200. I'm just kind of walking through those examples of how do you start farming the areas, okay? Somebody wants to go in Houston to the Bunker Hill area, you're not going to find a house that's $250,000 to $300,000. So what this does, and this you can do the same thing in HAR, you can do the same thing in realtor.com. What this does is helps you narrow down what areas you want to start targeting for your opportunities, right? So your marketing, and we're gonna, that's a whole nother topic, but marketing to the areas, working with your realtor in these specific areas, because your realtor is going to want to say, okay, where do you want to look? Well, you can't tell them all of Houston, because that's huge, right? You want to target certain zip codes. You want to target certain areas. How do you know which zip codes have 250 to 300,000? So this is how you do it. You pull up Zillow, you pull up our realtor, whatever you'd like. and then you put this 250 to 300 range. One of the other things I have learned the hard way through my investments, I personally like to stay with 3 bedrooms and above. And I used to look at 1.5 baths. I no longer look at 1.5 baths. Now, if you are thinking about expanding properties and adding a bathroom, you're welcome to look at ones. But right now, if your strategy is not that and you're not looking at doing add-ons, just flips, put 3+ and 2+. Because there's a lot of houses that fall in the 200 range that only have 1 bathroom. And guess what? People aren't going to want to buy a one bathroom house. I learned from experience. I had a 1.5. I had 2 of them and they stayed on the market for a while. So essentially what this has done, it's narrowed down our area. So if you want to say, okay, I want something closer to 610, now you can tell your realtor, hey, I want to go in between this street here, and you can target your area that you're looking for when that realtor asks you, hey, what are you looking for? In addition to that, you also are targeting your marketing, right? So if you're doing your own marketing as an investor, you can start working these areas, okay? This was just an example on how to use Zillow to dial your marketing area, okay? So let's say you have found a house and now you are ready to go. And one of the other things, I'm sorry, when working with the realtor, you can actually go into, oh, let me see if I can get here, okay? So this is Matrix. This is the MLS for Houston. Each of these look very different in each city. I've looked at the San Antonio one and I can't make heads or tails of it. It's a little bit complicated. So I do recommend working with the realtor when doing MLS. For those of you that have MLS access, one of the neat things I like to do when I'm looking for investment properties is you come down here to public remarks, and you can also do this in some of the other search engines as well. And you can put in investor. And I actually have, let me clear this map area. So we have 412 matches in Houston that the comment says investor. So there are keywords that realtors are going to put in there that I would say you can ask your realtor to start looking. I've seen TLC. Okay, there's one that says TLC. Repairs. So there are certain keywords that the agent's going to put in there. Maybe cash only. And you can also have your realtor put them in the realtor remarks. So it looks like there's 14 houses in Houston that have cash only. Why cash only? That house does not qualify for a conventional loan. If they're asking for cash only, that means it doesn't qualify for an FHA. It requires some work and some repair before it will qualify for a conventional loan. Okay, so those are all key things. And as you start looking in your MLS, start reading the agent remarks, you're going to start learning those words. I actually have a little note card that I write down all these words. And so whenever I'm ready to pull out and start looking for investor properties on the MLS, I pull out my card and I start going down those words. So those are just other little key points to start finding stuff on the MLS specific, right? Anything to add there, Diego, before I jump in an actual example?
No, I think you're on point, because the MLS tool is just so broad that you want to start to isolate by using keywords and expanding from the keywords, because if not, you're going to end up going 10 hours into this thing and barely chipping away at it. So
okay, it looks like, is there questions here?
Yeah, right. There was one question here that said, what do you think of the CMA software like Real Estate IQ? Can I give you what we've been able to find? So the Real Estate IQ or any other search engine that gives you comps is going to be pulling comps from an MLS software system, from what Andreana's pulling. The only thing there that I always tell people those softwares do not do is give you that human eye touch of seeing what does that house have in it. Does it have granite? Does it have hardwood floors or tile? Those are the differentiators called your fit and finish that those comps will never be able to give you.
Yep.
But it's a
And
good starting point.
Yes, I mean, and that's the same thing with Zillow. When you there is a Zillow Z estimate that gives you a good idea, but please do not use Zillow estimate because it doesn't, like Diego said, it doesn't encompass which ones have been rehabbed, which ones haven't been rehabbed. It doesn't have that eye into that, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that on one of the other documents that we're going to be reviewing. But before I jump into an actual MLS activity, I want to make sure everybody is on board with terms that we're going to be using. Tax, the other one is, the ARV's the tax value. No, the ARV is not the tax value. The appraised tax value is a value that the county has assessed for that property based on the other properties. And they do try to assess it based on the solds. That's why your property values go up. And then you have to go fight it and say, hey, wait a second, that's a rehab property. My house isn't rehabbed, etc. So that's the assessed tax value. That's the value of your house that the city is going to try to charge you taxes on, okay? And those are based on usually the solds from what I've learned in the area, but it's always a percentage lower. Market value is a price that somebody's willing to pay for it, right? So if you have a house and you've put $100,000 worth of rehab into a $250,000 house and now want to sell it for $500,000 in a neighborhood that's only 300, it's not going to sell because nobody wants to pay $500,000 in a $300,000 neighborhood. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's your market value, what somebody's willing to pay for it. Comparables is what is the the similar properties with the similar characteristics. You want to be comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And in some neighborhoods, for example, in Houston, you have a all brick house next to on a slab next to a all wood siding house on pier and beam. So when you have those mixed neighborhoods, this is why these automated real estate softwares, and any software for that matter that's going to give you a price for that house, this is where they're going to struggle. They're going to compare both houses and put them together in your price, right, in the comp that they're giving you, but they're not. Someone's going to pay more money for a brick house versus the wooden house. So always make sure that you are comparing apples to apples when you're looking at your comps.
And also that, Andreana, this falls into the question that somebody just asked. Says, if I'm going to buy a home to flip, should I consider what the buyer will most likely do with it?
Yes.
Basically,
And
is it going to be an investor versus an occupant?
Yes, and we'll talk about that a little bit when I go over the comp pictures, once we go through the comp activity, because that is very, very important. And so we'll come back to that. One of the other sections that we're going to be talking about, these are the different terms, and they may be changed a little bit if you're in a different city. They have different terminology for some of these things, but if you understand the basics, you'll understand what each means. Active means that the property is for sale on the market on the MLS, okay? Pending means that it has been put under contract and it's just waiting to close. But prior to that pending term being put into the pending category, there's an option. Option periods, you want to work with your realtor, and I always recommend putting an option period in your property that's the time that you're going to be doing your inspections. That's when you bring your inspector out there, you bring your contractor out there. Whatever inspections you need to do, the property is done in the option period. And usually it's $10 a day. Some people want more, but on average, I always start at $10 a day and then have the other realtor come back and ask for more. But you always want that time frame to go do your inspections. So usually that's anywhere from 7 to 10 days. You'll go into pending or pending continue to show. What does that mean? Pending means it's there. They don't think there's going to be any issues. Continuing to show is, hey, they're waiting for backup offers. You know, they're concerned that maybe this person's not going to be able to finance the house. There's something there that they're wanting to continue to let people into the property to see it, to hopefully get a backup offer. Sold is obviously once the property is sold. Expired, when I, as a realtor, go into a contract with somebody to sell the property, there's going to be an expiration date. I'm not going to be able to sit and have that property on the market forever. You could, but in the contract we put in an expiration date. That's when my agreement with the seller is going to be terminated, and that's when it goes from an active into an expired if it hasn't sold or hasn't gone pending. Withdrawn is, let's say the house is on the market, somebody went to go see it, and oh my goodness, somebody has gone in there and caused some damage, so I have to go in there and repaint a wall. Let's say somebody came in and put a shoe up on there during one of the showings, and we have to go repaint. Well, I will withdraw the property so that I'm not showing the property to anybody, because we don't want it to be shown during these conditions. And then I will put it back on the property. For some reason, it's been taken off from showing and availability to people. So any questions about those terms?
Yes, we had one here. Can you better explain what does $10 a day mean?
For the option period. So in the option period, usually the realtor amount that we normally use is $10 a day. So if the buyer wants 7 days of option, times 10 is going to be $70. So the buyer is going to pay $70 in order to have access to the house for 7 days. And if they find something on the repair list that they don't like, for example, let's say the house has structural problems that they didn't see, and the repair budget is actually going to be $30,000 more. Well, then that no longer puts them in a viable good opportunity deal, right? It's no longer a deal because, oh no, we didn't expect this additional repair. So they'll either terminate the contract and say, no, we're done with this contract, or they're going to renegotiate the price. So that's going to be your option period. But your option period gives you a legal out for 7 days. You pay the $70 or $100, whatever it is that you choose to give them, to give you a legal option to leave that contract within those 7 days. You can just decide, hey, I don't want to buy it anymore, and you can walk away. There is absolutely no reason that you need to provide other than, hey, I'm terminating the contract.
And there's no way you can get that option money back, or that's just money spent?
That is money spent.
Got it.
That is cost of doing business. And one of the things in real estate, you're going to learn option and even the earnest money, sometimes there's just a cost of doing business. I've walked away from a property after spending $1,500 from it. Please, that is, just think of it as a business expense and be prepared to walk away. It is okay. You expense it and move on to the next one, because there's always, I actually ran into a house after paying for inspections, etc., and it had a major structural problem. And so I walked away from it. So, any other questions?
Nope.
No? Okay. So really quickly, how do we determine what a good comp is? We're going to want to look and compare at the land size and where do we get this information. So you can go to your county tax records and find some of this information. Sometimes Zillow, if you put the address in, will give you some of this information. There's a couple other locations you can look at, but your county tax appraisal usually will have this. You want to know if the property that you're looking at, what the lot size is. You're going to want to know what the building square footage is. And by the way, garages are not part of the building square footage. Always some parts of Houston have garages converted over to living space. You always want to ask, is that a permitted garage? If it's a permitted garage, then that living space is added into it. And as an investor, if you're Pasadena area, if you're like in that area, a lot of the garages are converted. You need to find out if it was permitted. And that's very easy. You just call up the permit office and say, hey, I'm looking to buy this house. I'm wondering what permits have been pulled. You don't want to tell them there is a garage conversion. Please don't get them in trouble. But you want to ask them, hey, what has been pulled on this property? And sometimes you'll be able to see, depending on your tax appraiser, sometimes you'll be able to see that they've added on additional building square footage, okay? So there's a lot of different ways to analyze that. But as an investor, you're going to want to add that square footage to that property if you're going to leave it as that, okay? And talking about garages, and just because we're here at this topic, going back to the earlier question that we had about comparing apples to apples, we had an investor who had a house. He bought it as an investment. He was going to flip it, but the house was already converted. The garage was converted into house space. The square footage of the house, they did it right. They got it permitted. The square footage of the house was part of all of the square footage, including the garage, the conversion, I'm sorry. And it was the only house in this neighborhood that had a converted garage. So it did not sell. He should have converted that garage back into a garage because it didn't match apples to apples what was in that neighborhood. So we have the scenario where it gets converted and you can leave it, and then you have the scenario where, hey, you may need to convert it back depending on what your comps tell you. Sorry for the side note there. You're going to want to know what the bedrooms are, the bathrooms. Remember, we talked about slab and pier and beam. If you do not know what these mean, please go do a YouTube video to learn about slabs and different foundation types in the area in which you live. And then again, building characteristics. What is that? Brick, siding, hardy board, all of those you need to understand what are the different characteristics of the house on the exterior. Learn shingles, different types of shingles, asphalt, flat roof. All of those are characteristics you're going to want to compare apples to apples. If your house has a flat roof, you want to compare it to another flat roof house. Okay? And then step 2, you're going to want to keep your search area when you do a comp to 1 mile. Some areas, depending on what tool you're using, it will give you the 1 mile radius. Some tools you can actually draw, and that will be the next step that we're going to talk about. You also don't want to, yes, you're going to start with that 1 mile, but then you're going to want to look at that map and understand, hey, am I crossing a major intersection? Am I crossing a railroad track? Am I crossing a gully or a bayou? If within that 1 mile, if you're crossing any of these big, large divisions, you're going to have to search within that division, okay? You're going to want to look at plus or minus 10% of square footage of the house, okay? So you're going to go in, for example, if you go here to Zillow, of course, home type, we're looking at houses. And let's say the house that we're looking at is in this general area. I always struggle drawing here. Draw. There we go. Okay. I'm technically crossing over Antoine, which is a major road, and 43rd, but this is all kind of the Oak Forest area. So we'll go ahead and apply. So when I say plus or minus 10%, so let's say the house that we're looking at is 1,800 square feet, as an example. I'm gonna pull up my calculator here. So there's a neat trick. If you're doing 1,800, you're gonna do minus 10% and you're gonna do plus 10%. So the neat trick is if you do 1,800 and you do times 0.9. Why 0.9? That's 10% less than 100%. And if we need more explanation, let me know and we can talk about it on the side. So I always do 0.9 and then you do 1,800 times 1.1, which is the plus 10%. So that's 1980. Okay. Now here, depending on the software that you're using, you may not have the ability to punch in these numbers. In the MLS you do, but if you're in Zillow, you're gonna try to get as close as possible to the 1620. So we're gonna do 1,500 minimum, and then 1980 was the max. So 1980 is 2,000. So any questions about how to calculate the plus or minus 10% there? No?
No.
Okay. And then we're gonna do.
And Andreana, sorry, one of the I think another key point to bring up here is why are we looking at it within those parameters is that a lot of the appraisers are going to use those parameters. And so we want to make sure we're pulling comps with the person or the opinion, in fact, that a lot of lenders are going to be using when things get bought. So it's good to start off on the right foot.
Yeah. So really quickly, when we're talking about apples and apples, look at this house right here and look at this house right here. Are we talking the same year built? Probably not. This area is probably a little bit more stable as year built, but there may be areas that are a piece of the neighborhood that got, oops, let me get back to the tab. Okay, there we go. So that brings me into the next topic, right? So we want to compare plus or minus 10% of subject lot size. And then here we go with the years built. You want to do plus or minus 10% so that you get rid of those houses that were built beyond those plus or minus 10, because it's going to be newer. People are going to they'll pay more for a newer house and pay less for an older house, right? You want to make sure the number of bedrooms and bathrooms are the same. I've seen a lot of people that want me to validate their comps, and they come to me in these areas that have the one bathrooms, and they're looking at these comps and they're like, look, it could be a $400,000 house. I say, okay, it could be a $400,000 house, but are you adding a bathroom? Well, what do you mean? Well, because the subject house you're looking at has one bathroom and all the comps have two bathrooms. Oh, I didn't expect that, right? So make sure that you're looking at the same number of bathrooms and bedrooms. Now, that does not mean that not to look at one bathroom houses. If you are ready to start doing add-ons, by all means, leave them in your search criteria, okay? And then going to what we were talking about earlier about active, pending, and solds. And a good comp area and an area that we recommend to flip in is going to have more than 3 active houses, more than 3 pending houses, and more than 3 solds. Okay, this is very important, guys. If you have less, you do not have enough turn in that market. Okay, if you have one sold house, that's not a good comps. I would not be comfortable giving you comps off of one sold, okay? And then if there's not a lot of actives, that means there's not a lot of movement. Not a lot of people are coming to this neighborhood. Either one, they're not selling, so people aren't coming. The realtors aren't bringing people. So when it comes time to sell that house, you're gonna have less traffic coming through that neighborhood, okay? And then the last point that we always wanna do is looking at the last 6 months. And if that doesn't give you enough data, you can go to a year, but we really wanna keep you in 6 months. Why? Because your market's gonna go up and down, right? It is seasonal. So every 6 months, you're gonna be going up and down in pricing. So if you have the spring and summer high, where there's a lot of movement and people are moving right before school, and you're putting this house on the market in December, you're not gonna be able to sell at those prices that were spring and summer, okay? That's gonna be you're gonna have to already list it a little bit less, okay? But with regards to an ARV, you want to keep to 6 months. The appraisals also use 6 months. Okay?
So Andreana, we have a question here. It says, for the 3 classifications of properties, in what distance and time period?
For the 3 classifications. Which 3 classifications? I'm sorry. So the active, pending, and sold?
I'm assuming, if you could be a little bit more specific, this was an anonymous attendee. You said yes for the active, pending, and
okay. Yes, they all have to be. So when you're doing the searches, you're going to put plus or minus 10% square footage, plus or minus lot size, and then plus or minus the years of the property. Okay. Once all of that is put into the system, you're going to want to see 3 actives, 3 pendings, and 3 solds, all in that same general search criteria. One of the things I always tell people, I bought, one of my properties was the biggest house in the neighborhood, okay? But the activity was all in the smaller houses. The bigger houses weren't selling. And so you need to understand the neighborhood and what's selling and what's not. I wouldn't have bought a bigger house. I was very excited. I was new. This was before I started at StratiVentures and knew really how to run comps and analyze the neighborhood. But I got very excited because that ARV was so high. I was like, yes, I'm so excited. And then I realized the churn was in the smaller houses. People weren't buying that price point of the bigger houses. So just something to be aware of. Why it's so important to stick to the plus or minus 10%. One of the other things when we're talking about the larger houses and the smaller houses, people always want to clump them all together and use an average square foot price and then multiply it by theirs. And that's not the case, guys. When you have a smaller house in the same neighborhood, the price per square foot is going to be higher. The median is going to be obviously the median price per square foot, and the larger houses are going to have less price per square foot, okay? Why is that? Because neighborhoods have a general price point that they're going, price range. So the houses are going to kind of range, but you need to be aware that the smaller houses are going to have a higher price per square foot, and then the larger houses have lower. This is an argument I always have with wholesalers because they want to tell me that the small house price point, price per square foot, is what I'm going to get for the large one. I say, no, that's not how you run comps, okay? So we want to make sure that we keep to this criteria. I know there's a lot of different other ways to do comps, especially with the price per square foot, but that's where it becomes dangerous when we start clumping them all together and not understanding the sizes of the properties. Okay? Any questions thus far? So I'm just going to come back over here to Zillow. It is definitely not my favorite tool, but my biggest argument, everybody is like, well, wait a second, I don't have access to the MLS. It's not a big deal. You can do this same thing, not in the MLS. So let's say our lot square footage is 4,000 to 7,500. And I'm not sure what the year built in this area is. So, but see how we start going down and smaller and smaller. we also wanted, I forgot to add this. This is how you're going to pull your comps. These are going to be sold. And unfortunately, that is one of the things I don't like about Zillow is you can't have for sale and sold at the same time. So you can take a look at your solds and then you can take a look at your for sales. Okay, so not my favorite tool, but I always want to show everybody to make sure that they are aware that you can do this also in Zillow. HAR is the same way. I'm not going to go through this detail, but you can see the criteria all is the same way as Zillow. You can also add amenities as well on HAR. Okay. So in the MLS, so we've gone through that. Oh, Diego, do you know how to move this black screen, the black toolbar down to the bottom?
Just grab it and drop it. You can literally drag it.
So technical difficulties. I'm sorry, guys. Thank goodness. Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
Awesome.
I couldn't get to my tabs. Okay, so this is the matrix, and we have an example. And this tool is realtors only. And then you can work with your realtor and work with them maybe side by side, and they can teach you a little bit more. But I go into search. You can search by single family, condo, lots, blah, 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 and on and on. I always come here to all properties and I go to the quick. And what did we talk about first, right? We want to know 1 mile around a property. So we're going to use this example. Property. I always start out with a half a mile first, and then I will go to a mile if I need to. We're going to be looking at single family only. Let's say you are a landlord looking for a rental property. So you're going to want your realtor to give you your single family plus down here your rental. Okay, that way you have it in one CMA instead of having 2 different CMAs. Okay, so right now, if we look at this map, and mind you, we've only done half a square footage. What do we see here, guys? We got one big road here, right? So we're gonna zoom in. So just so y'all see how to read this, here's the red dot is the subject property. These houses on this side, we're not going to be able to use. Same thing with over here on Main. Okay, so what I'm going to do, oh, I zoomed out a little too much. I'm going to erase this circle, and then I'm going to draw on the main, on the big streets.
That's my favorite neighborhood.
Okay, so now we have eliminated the crossing over large streets, and we have 67 results. And if you look at this, you've got anywhere from 150 up to 300. Okay, so this subject property is 1440 square feet. So we're going to go 1414 times 0.9, 1414 times 1.1. One of the things I personally do is always kind of round down or round up. So here I'm going to round down to 1250, and here I'm going to round up to 1600. Okay. So now we are down, just with the square footage, now we're down to 26. Now the lot size is 1658, I'm sorry, 6758, which is 6050, 7450. Okay, and the year built is a 1960s house, so it's going to be 1950 to 1970. So the MLS is really nice because you can type all of this stuff in. So I recommend getting access. Now here's our problem. We got 2 comps. And what did we say? 3 actives, 3 pending, and 3 solds. This is not a good area, or our criteria is too strict, right? So we need to kind of dial things back because we did have 26 properties. So there should be, we need to understand what is changing in the area.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean Independence Heights is not a good area? What happens if you look at this as a new build?
Yes, this is what I'm about to show you. Let's take out this year. So if I take out the year, remember there was only 2. If I take out the year, how many do we have now? 3. Mm-hmm. So there's 1 newer house. Okay, well, that's not it. Lot size. In most cities, the lot size, that's the one thing you cannot change on the property, right? So it's the only thing that I tell you you can't change. Now let's figure out, let's put back the year. Let's figure out what the square footage is going on here. So remember, our square footage is 1250 to 1600. Oops. So let's take that out. And so now we got some more information. So it looks like we are less than, and we have 1 larger than. So it looks like our lots are the problem. Okay, so just in general, here's an example of how to pull comps. I'm going to go ahead and show you another example.
Can you do something real quick? Go back to that one, Andreana, and go to criteria. So if you just take the lot size out,
yep,
take the year out, and when you start to see data, you see where it says go to new construction down at the bottom?
Oh.
That little, no, up at the top, right there.
Yep.
Hit yes. You got 32 matches.
Yep.
And you'll start to see that in higher density areas like that, the larger lots now are being replatted into smaller lots. So that's a big thing there.
Okay. So this is an example of how to go through the MLS. What I'm going to show you next is there's 3 things you need to ask from your realtor when they give you your comp analysis. You want 3 things. You want your CMA. This is your CMA. You're going to want your comps with pictures, and you're going to want a realist report. So I'm going to go really quickly through this real fast. This is an analysis for a property. Where's the address? In Pearland, here, 1123 Beckton Lane in Pearland. See how we have the lots, the year, and the building square footage, right? We're doing the plus or minus 10%. You always want to keep that bubble. And you're going to see here are our solds. And I'm not sure, I apologize, this example doesn't have the actives or pendings. This realtor only provided just the solds. So you're going to see a range of 204 to 245. Now don't get confused because this is the list price. This is the price that it was put on the market. Sold price is the price that it actually sold for. You're going to have a lot of information here, right? So you have the address, the subdivision, pool, bedroom, garages. Remember, I usually don't pay attention to garages, but in certain areas you do. When you start seeing a house that's either 1 garage or no garage, that's when you need to start paying attention to this field. Your square footage, your year built, your lots are all within the plus or minus 10% or 10 years. Here's your list. Here's the price per square foot for the list. This is the days on market. You also want to look at properties that are found in days on market that are less than 60 days. What does that mean? Days on market means from the time it got put on the market to the time that it got sold, till it got under contract, this is less than 60 days. Why? Because you're going to have more carrying costs, right? You want short so that your carrying costs are less. It gives you your closing date, your sold date, and price per square foot. And then this percentage at the very end, can y'all see the percentage? Because I've got this blocking.
You can make it just a little bit bigger. But we can see the percentage.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
So the percentage here is the comparison of the list price to sold price. So this is going to give you, remember I told you that market trend, sometimes there's areas that are going to be a little bit less. It's going to be key for you when it comes time for you to estimate your sales price. You're going to want to know you have a range of about anywhere from 3 to 0% that you're going to be, they're going to offer you less, and they're going to be buying the house for less. Okay. Now, the important part for you from an ARV perspective is this section down here. Your minimum, like I said, was 204. Your maximum was 245. Your average is 231, and your median is 235. I'm not going to talk about the difference between average and median. If you have questions, go Google it. But I would tell you your ARV falls between 230 and 235 because it's in between the average and median. Okay, so this is your what's called a CMA. So it's your comparable analysis, market analysis. So it's comparing your markets, and what this realtor has done is she's already gone through the analysis process and eliminated all the properties that have not been rehabbed. Okay, so she's eliminated the ones that are original state that have, you know, the Formica countertops, have no work done, and are comparing all the apples to apples.
Because it's Jolanda Thomas. She's one of our
Yes.
great SVI agents.
Including me. So
Yeah.
this is the next this is the next tool. This is going to be your comps with pictures, and this is very important for a lot of different reasons. Number one, you want to see what your realtor's comparing. You want to know what the pictures look like, right? You want to know what you are going to need to do to that property. So going back to that question, interestingly enough, this one still has the cultured marble in the bathroom. It has granite in the kitchen. So now you can tell your contractor, leave the bathrooms alone, just put granite in the kitchen, okay? So you can now decide what your scope of work is going to be based on these pictures. This house looks same thing. It's got Formica. This one's got Formica in the culture, so it doesn't look like they've done anything other than maybe flooring and paint. Okay. So going back to that question, always do what the comps say. If I had a gentleman who wanted to put colorful curtains on the house, and our interior decorator said, no, you cannot do that. Why? Because these houses aren't being sold with the curtains, right? That's going to be a deterrent to the property. And so it's always good to have somebody that can help you as well, look at these pictures and help you make your selections as well. And I got to tell you, this property doesn't look like they've done very much to it from a comps perspective. Let's take a look at the next one. By the way, these are not very good pictures. Make sure you get professional pictures done, because if not, this is what you see. Okay. Sorry if I'm going fast. I'm just kind of scrolling through this. Again, Formica countertops, cultured marble, looks like they just redid the flooring. So what does this tell you? This tells you exactly what you need to do to the property. And now you hand this over to your contractor and say, this is what I want the property to look like. Okay, so that's why this is important. This is your comps with pictures. And then the last one is going to be your Realist Report. Nationally, most realtors should have access to a Realist Report. And what this is going to give you, it will also give you comps, but I'll tell you this, again, it's a computerized system. It's not going to give you the comp analysis the way it should, eliminating the rehabbed and non-rehabbed.
But it's a little bigger. Sorry, I guess, there you go.
Okay, so it's going to give you neighborhood information. So the population, age, married, single. So there's a couple of points we want to look at here. So you can find the fair market rents information. There's tons and tons of information. Blue collar, white collar, what kind of industries in this area. But there's 4 points we want to look at. Average income. So here's the first one, is your schooling. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to sell this house to a family looking for good schools, right? So you want to make sure that the school rating is a 3 or better. Now, if you are looking at rentals, that one may not apply to you. And we can talk about that on the side. And I must have skipped over the other areas. Sorry. So I apologize. So I'll summarize it here for you. Marital status, 50% or greater. Why do we care about marital status? The one thing that is, everybody always likes to go to foreclosures and go buy the foreclosure houses. But what does that mean? Somebody has lost their job and has lost their house. And if there's an area that has too many foreclosures, it's going to reduce the value of the house. And usually marital status will tell you, okay, if there's 2 people that are married, if one loses their job, that risk of foreclosure is going to be a lot less. You're going to have one other income at least to rely on. Doesn't mean you're not going to lose the house, but there's still some income coming in versus if it were just a single or divorced, there'd be a lot less, there higher risk for the foreclosure. So that's why we look for 50% or better. The occupancy comparison, again, going back to my comment about rental versus ownership. If you're looking for flips, you want to have greater ownership versus rentals. Now, if you're looking for rentals, this would be opposite, right? You want to be in a good rental area. Again, the school district, you want 3 or higher. And then you want a seller score indicator. So you want to know where it's ranking. Okay, so these are the 4 points you want to look at. Of course, I know foreclosure is kind of a touchy subject, but you want to make sure that you're not chasing after that foreclosure because that market may be going down. So just be aware that that's a risk. Do we want to go through, do I have time for another example, or do we want to, anybody have one in particular?
Actually, we've got some questions. We can move this into the Q&A section if you'd like.
Sure.
So feel free, guys. It's an open question board here now on the Q&A of your Zoom screen. And somebody asked, do you need MLS access or a real estate broker to do a CMA? Or is that something that an investor can do on their own without MLS access?
You do need an MLS access to go through that CMA that I went through. There are tools and softwares that help you to do that as an investor. But I always going back to remember that you want to compare apples to apples, rehab to rehab, non-rehab to non-rehab, right? So you want to be able to separate those out. Not all the tools out there allow you to do that. MLS access, become friends with a realtor and they'll help you out with that. And I can't share much more than that.
Okay, let's see here. It said a little off topic, but how would you run comps on land, preferably on the MLS?
Okay, same thing. You go through instead of doing the single family, there's an option for lots, and we would do the same thing with the lots. It'd be plus or minus square footage of the lot.
Can I say something about that there, Andreana? Is we deal with a lot of investors, and new builds happen to be one of the major directors or directions that we take at SVI. And people will come to you and say, hey, I found this amazing lot for $5,000. One thing we always say is, please tell me you didn't buy it yet. Great, you did? Okay, let's work the numbers, because guys, there's a certain cost to build, right? There's a certain after constructed value, not after repaired value. And after you put down all those numbers and filter down all your costs, even if they gave you the lot for free, the numbers wouldn't work. So it's
Yeah.
about first making sure you have appropriate after constructed new build comps, then to start scaling down to see what your lot allowance is. How much can you afford, or what is the cost allowance for the lot? Don't fall into that, guys. A cheap lot will be there for a long time, and there's a reason why it's been there for a long time.
Yeah. Or they may not have access. The lot may not have access to a road, may not have the utilities. So make your due diligence when it comes to that. One thing here that is relatively new for the Houston area, and it's very important for the Houston area, is a flood map.
Yep. And
One
just
of
in
the
general
costs-
around the country, check
Yeah.
your flood maps. Yeah.
One of the costs that have bit me in the butt, it's only bit me once because I learned after that one time. It's on a rental. It's in a AE zone. And it was pre all this flooding situation that I bought it, but my flood insurance is pretty high because it's an AE. So make sure you know what type of property you're buying. This is one of step number 2. If you don't have this access, go to your local flood maps and look up the property to make sure what you're buying. Understand, I'm not saying don't go to an AE. I'm saying understand what your costs are going to be.
Yep. And with that, we had a question said, what flood map do we recommend using? That sometimes the FEMA maps are probably one of the last ones to be updated because they're the general most important flood map. But what would you say to that?
The FEMT, let me, Harris, as far as Harris County, let me show.
Or in general, to answer that question, if you don't mind, Andreana, is just contact a local civil engineer company in your area and ask them what flood map do you use, and they'll tell you which one to use, because civil engineers are going to use those particular types of maps.
Yeah, for Harris County, this is the one I use, but again, it's a little delayed.
Okay. Somebody asked, I missed what seller score indicator meant. Could you clarify?
Diego,
Yeah,
point.
it's a new thing that a lot of your realist reports are giving you, which is what is the viability or what is the likelihood your property is going to sell within 6 months. That means a low seller indicator score means longer hold times, longer periods to sell, which means not a good opportunity for an investment. Higher seller score means higher demand of sale, which means you might get 100% of list price or more, but you'll definitely sell within 6 months or less, which is where we want to be. We also had a question here from Luis. Hey, Luis, said, how much does a realtor typically charge for running comps? Is it $1 million a pull? No, just kidding.
So that is what you've negotiated with them. Normally, we're here to earn your business to sell the property once you're done flipping it. So if you are buying off of the MLS, you work with that realtor to buy the house, and then you work with them to list it. Even as an investor, if a realtor brings me a house to buy, I always give it listed back to them. So they're going to make their 3% on the purchase side, and then they'll make the 3% on the sales side. Normally, it's full 6% that I pay out in order for them to make. I mean, they're making their living, right? There are realtors that you can grovel into 1%, but that's the service you're going to be receiving from them is a 1%. If I charge 1%, I'm not going to be doing comps for you. I'm basically putting it on the MLS for you and paying for my fees out of my commission. So please be aware, if you are expecting comps and the level of service, to pay the full 3% to your realtor.
Okay, another key point there for those of you that are looking to get access to the MLS is the way we obtained access to the MLS, and we are not agents, is that we literally told our real estate agent, can you pull comps for us? We're real estate investors, and we started to build that relationship. And then eventually we sent him so many properties that he said, let me make you a non-licensed assistant. So we became a non-licensed assistant, which means now we have access to pull our own comps. So we pay our realtors MLS or dues, annual dues every year, which is the best $400 to $500 a year that we spend. Now, for all of those that are thinking about becoming SVI members or want to know more about SVI memberships, guess what? If you have access to the MLS, we train you to pull comps as a licensed real estate agent, and how to pull comps using the MLS. And that's for every single one of our members. We'll train you to use that tool. So just wanted to throw that in there. So Andreana, I know we're getting down and we just went over, and we really appreciate your time that you spent with us. So what I want to go ahead and do is to close out right here. Let me make sure that we get this in order right here. This is Andreana's full contact information for you to reach out to her. She's amazing. She'll answer questions. Also remember guys, that she also works in the hard money lending platform to work with you. Is there any closing comments that you want to have before we go ahead and show the final QR code that people can scan to know more about us?
No, I mean, just reach out to me. I know everyone is in all different parts. If I can't help you, I can always recommend you to somebody within my network in your particular area. So please don't be hesitant. I may not have the answers to everything, but I can find out for you if I don't. So
all right.
Wonderful network within SVI if I don't have the answers for you.
Thank you, Andreana. And guys, to know more about us, I think Ariana and Enid were saying scan the QR code. Feel free to put your phone up against this QR code and you're going to get to know everything about us. Also, follow us on all the social media platforms, like and subscribe. As stated, this is recorded and it's going to be put on our YouTube channel, StratiVentures. And if you want to know more about us, guys, go to www.investorrealestatetraining.com. We always have free information there, and you'll be able to see any up and coming webinars that we've got. But as normal, Andreana, you've always, you're a blessing to work with a ton of our members, the data you give, the funding that you've done. And most of all, I love the way you put things in the straight, non-sugar-coated manner, because at SVI, it's about the numbers, right? It's the reality there.
Yeah, so, definitely don't fall in love with your project. It's all about the numbers.
Oh, it's all about the numbers. So I want to thank everybody that joined us this evening. Know that not every other Monday, so obviously every 2 weeks, we have our sessions and webinars. So we look forward to seeing everybody else again. And those of you that are joining us for like the 800th time, thank you for sticking with us. And everybody else that is looking to get more information about us, don't hesitate to drop us a line, because either you work with us or not, we want to make sure we're helping everybody in the community. So thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful evening. And I cannot believe Paul Bryan said, go Liverpool. Sir, no. Oh, I love our members. Good night, everybody.
Good night.